Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM, and this is a show where we hang out, we talk about games, we talk about board games, role-playing games, card games, we talk about things that inspire us, things that make us want to be better game masters, players, DMs, GMs, and hopefully humans, because I truly believe that role-playing is an art and something beautiful that can elevate uh, us, create empathy, spark conversation, creativity in a way that very few things do in our world, because most of the types of entertainment we have are very consumptive in the fact that we sit down and we consume them, and there's very little interaction. When I read a novel, I read the novel. I sit down to watch a television show or a movie. I enjoy music, and these are all things that I enjoy doing and bring me joy and are beautiful, but they are very much enjoyed as a consumer and very rarely as a creator. That's one of the beauties of role-playing games, and I think that's why they capture our imagination so much, is that they're one of the few forms of entertainment where everybody who is playing is participating in creating what is going on. We're going to talk more about that on Thursday. So why am I bringing that up now? Well, today we're talking about how to run games for kids. This was a campaign clinic brought up, I believe, by John Doom. Good morning to John and Padre and Grom and Tink. Good to see all of you. And one that's close to my heart, or a topic that's close to my heart, because I run a lot of games for kids. I started running games for my son when he was about 4. I've run games for him and his friends. I do a after-school club every Wednesday for a group of grade schoolers and middle schoolers at my son's school. Once a month, I'm up at Madness, which is a local game store, running games for kids. We've got a Savage Worlds one, I think, coming up in April, and then May, I think we're going to try and do a Dragonbane one. And so I've run a lot about this. I think a lot about this because I'm of Gen X. I grew up with my formative years without a computer, and we were early adopters. My dad's work, he worked at a company called Baxter Healthcare, and they sent computers home with him. I had my first computer when I was maybe in 4th grade. 4th or 5th grade. It was trapezoidal shaped, had a keyboard that folded down, had an amber screen, and everything was loaded not on 3.5-inch discs, but on 5.25 actual floppy disks. It had no operating system. You put the disc in, you clamped it down, and it ran whatever program was on there. And every year or two, we got a new computer because he was able to bring one home. So I was an early adopter. And still, I remember what it was like to grow up without a computer, or an iPod, or an iPad, or streaming, or my phone. Oh man, I'm wondering if that might have been what it was, Grom. It was basically just this side of a glorified electric typewriter. But I also remember dot matrix printers. It's just me reminiscing, where you had to like tear off the edges of the paper as it was spooled through. Right. No one really thinks about the iPod anymore, do they, Molly? All right, so why am I talking about this and reminiscing about all of this with kids? Well, I've noticed that, like, my son, kids love entertainment. We always have. But the entertainment of kids today is a lot different than the entertainment of mine growing up or those of my younger siblings. They're much more entertainment, much more app focused, much more iPad or tablet or screen driven. And I think that introducing kids to role-playing games early is very important. Let's get in there while their imaginations are malleable and they want something super creative to dig into. And one of the best parts about introducing kids to role-playing games is how it is an outlet for multiple types of creativity. Kids in the school club, they're drawing their characters, they're drawing scenes, they're coming up with their own stories, they're wanting to step into the roles as game masters. In fact, that's what this week in the club, we just got back from spring break, and they are going to take over running the games for the next month. They want to write their own adventures. This is something that is amazing. And as a parent, it's something we can engage and share with our kids in a way that I think in a lot of times when we want to share our hobbies with our kids, we have to kind of be a little guarded because, okay, maybe this movie that I love isn't appropriate for them at this time, or this novel that I want to share with them. Okay, let's kind of hedge that bet here. But role-playing games allow us to match the medium with the audience. I don't think that, again, aside without curation, that there's another form of entertainment that you can share as openly with kids as it is role-playing games. All right, so what happens when we share games with kids? What are some of the guidelines, the problems I've encountered? What are some ways to engage your kids as young as you can with role-playing games? All right, so first of all, I think tactile, the younger the audience, I try to do half-hour to 45-minute sessions. Maybe we do 2 or 3 of them over the course of a day, but keep it nice and short. Instead of minis, I may do 1 or 2 minis. I enjoy using snacks as miniatures for younger kids. That way, when you kill the goblin, you get to eat the goblin. And if that goblin happened to be a gummy bear or a Skittle or a pretzel, immediate reward feedback loop instigated. Thinks it has 360 petabyte drive. That's amazing, John. You should test that. So, other things to consider when talking about running games for really young kids is wiggle breaks. Like when they do something awesome, let them stand around and run around and do a little happy dance. If they want to act out some of the things, help them get that energy out while engaging their creativity. Obviously, you have to tune the game to the level of the kids you're playing with. So a complex Game of Thrones-esque plot is probably not what you're going to run for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. It's going to be a little bit simpler. It's going to be more focused on risk-reward. But what I discovered with my son is that, hey, as we're playing, he's learning how to be creative, how to talk, like and interact with people. He's developing some empathy for the creatures and characters he's encountering. He's learning basic math skills. Like, there are tons of reasons to do this. Additionally, it's time that my son still remembers to this day. Like, he remembers Bleep and Blorp, his little robots that we were running through a very simplified version of Numenera. As they get older, you can deal with more complex topics and plots. I have 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th graders in the Savage Worlds Club that I run at the school. And we dealt with an underground society that had been driven under there by nuclear war, and they were having to deal with a broken water reclamation system and heading out to try and scavenge the parts that they needed. They encountered intelligent crab-like beings and had to make the decision: do we fight them or do we try and reason with them? There were shades of gray and complexity that was brought in, and again, you can deal with that in the 9 to 10, 9 to 13 or 14 range. Those are the times you can start introducing more complex plots. And I honestly think that by the time you get to teenage years, you don't really have to pull as many punches. You may have to pull punches content-wise, but not plot-wise. Yes, Mark, that was the whole plan. They wanted to do a dystopian future, and I was like, sweet, none of you have ever probably played Fallout, so let's use the hook from the original Fallout video game to run this. All right, so what are some other advices? As I said, giving kids time to have wiggle breaks or, you know, rewards as they're playing is important. Another key thing that's important is have some way of rewarding players for good behavior. Kids have impulse control issues. It's not their fault. It is something they're learning how to deal with. And so there's two ways of approaching this. Punishing kids who talk over other kids, who ignore initiative, who are disruptive, or, I think this is the better way, rewarding kids who realize this is how we interact as a group. So I have a rule. If you raise your hand at my table to ask a question as opposed to blurting it out, you get a Benny. If you wait your turn and don't tell me what's going on, don't yell out your die roll until I ask for it, you get a Benny. This can work with inspiration in Dungeons and Dragons, fate points in Jackals. Obviously, it works great with Bennies in Savage Worlds. Find ways to reward good behavior as opposed to punishing bad behavior at your table. And there are multiple reasons for this. Right? Typically, we fail at things for one of three reasons. We didn't know the correct response. We knew the correct response and chose deliberately not to engage with it. Or we knew the correct response, but were somehow too weak to engage with it. And I think positive reinforcement, encouragement on that last one is really the key at a gaming table. Kids who've never played a game, you're going to have to be explaining the social mores and how the game works. Once they know that, you want to encourage them when they fall back on bad habits to engage with the new rules, the new social constraints, as opposed to assuming they're doing it on purpose. That's why Molly gets all of these bennies in my games. That's why Tink gets them. So, what games are good for kids? I'm going to be honest. I think any game is good for kids as long as you are willing to shoulder the majority of the complexity. I've run RuneQuest and Glorantha for kids. It was a stripped down version of RuneQuest and Glorantha, but it was RuneQuest and Glorantha. I've run Forbidden Lands for kids. Dungeons and Dragons 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition for kids. Actually, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition for kids. Hey, Phantom! It is great to see you. If you guys haven't, Phantom's been doing a lot of streaming. You should check out his streaming. You can find it, I assume, at Phantom of Truth, or twitch.com or twitch.tv/Phantom of Truth. I see it come up quite often. Fading Suns. Any game can be good for kids as long as you boil it down. And so here's what I would suggest. If you're running for kids under the age of 6 or 7, what you really want to focus on is just the core resolution mechanic. Don't worry about combat. Don't worry about, to a degree, like all of the different combat bells and whistles. Boil it down to the core of what the mechanic is. If it's Call of Cthulhu, which I assume you're running more as a Scooby-Doo as opposed to a Lovecraft influence, focus on D100 rolls. Let the kids learn where to find their skill on their character sheet and how to read a D100. That's 90% of what they're going to be doing anyway. For Savage Worlds, I focus on the target number is 4 and figuring out what die you need to roll in addition to your D6. Dungeons and Dragons, it's a D20 roll. Forbidden Lands, it's die pool. Hey, what's coming up with 6s? These are the core mechanics, and for younger kids, that's really all that you need to do. Strip away all of the excess stuff that we enjoy as adults and focus on the gameplay experience. Focus on the fun that they're having. But I wouldn't shy away from death in games. I've actually had multiple kids lose their characters in my games. And I let them deal with it. We work through it, we give them a new character, and we set them back on. This sets them up for understanding that sometimes the risks that they take, they're there isn't a reward, that sometimes it's a little bit more painful than that. As they get used to the core mechanics, then you can slowly introduce complexity. A great game for this, I'm really glad to say that Robert Schwalb put out, is it Shadow? It's not Shadow of the Demon Lord, which I would not recommend for kids. But he's just put out a new game, which I know he's rewritten the title of several times. I'll figure it out and put it in the show notes. Something about the wizard. Why this is Shadow of the Weird Wizard. That's it, Grom. I was like, it used to be like Dungeons of the Mad Mage, and then it was Shadow of the Mad Mage, and now, yes, Shadow of the Weird Wizard. Thank you, Grom. Enjoy a Benny. Why this is a great game for introducing kids to role-playing games is, one, it's a D20 game, very simple to understand, but two, you start as a 0-level character, and each level introduces only really one more instance of complexity. At level 0, you just have to worry about skill rolls and attack rolls. Grom, you do get this Benny. It is hereby announced at 10:16 Central Time. Looks like we're about 20 minutes into the episode, so you can queue it up and show it off to your GM. It gatekeeps the complexity, right? At level 0, you're just worried about D20 rolls and maybe how skill rolls work. And then at level 1, you get a class that has one ability. And then at level 2, you get another ability. And so it kind of shows you how to increase the complexity for people as they get... Oh, I'll let Tracy know too. I can reach out and say, hey, Tracy, I gave someone a Benny for your game. I'm sure she'll uphold it. All right, so here's the thing, John. I have played No Thank You Evil. I bought heavily into No Thank You Evil because I was really excited about running it for Zane. I also have this one, Pine Box Middle School, which is the next thing I'm going to be running for the kids at my at my son's school for their game. No Thank You Evil had a lot of cool fidgets and widgets and layout and design that intrigued Zane. He loved the map. Like when I explained the setting to him, he immediately wanted me to build portals in his room to the other world. What I discovered from gameplay is it is a very simple game, and Zane quickly lost interest in, and I'm not saying that's going to be for every kid, but Zane lost interest in the game as we were playing, and we actually moved on to Axe, which is basically BX D&D. Had a little bit more crunch for him, but he loved all of the tokens and the dice and all of the things that comes in the No Thank You Evil box set, which is just wonderful. Yes, John, I am super envious. So the production value is great. The setting is very imaginative, kid friendly. I just wish the rules had a little bit more depth to them. But for other kids, that might be perfect as a good entry point into gaming. And the last thing I would say is don't underestimate your kids. Whether they're your kids or they're kids in the group. If you're running for kids, be prepared to be surprised. They're going to surprise you with unexpected empathy. They're going to surprise you with out-of-the-box thinking. They're going to surprise you in their resilience in both learning the rules and dealing with the consequences of failure. One of my favorite stories from the second edition game I was running for kids was I was running for my son and a friend of mine and 3 of their kids. And this friend was playing a Were-Bear Berserker. and was almost dead in this room where he was hunting where they were hunting goblins, and went berserk and didn't know where his hit points were at, because in second edition, as soon as you go berserk, the GM starts keeping track of all of the damage you're taking and never lets you know where you're at. You can survive a lot more into the negative, but if you're still in the negative when the berserk is up, you die. And you leave berserk when there's no enemies. So there was a door to the room, and Ben kicked in the door because he was like, I gotta go into this other room and I gotta fight more enemies so that the group has time to heal me. Well, what no one knew was that on the other side of the door was the women and children of the goblin camp. And I was like, well, this is going to be an interesting conundrum for the kids, who at the time were 9, 8, and 7. And so as each character entered the room, I pulled them away from the table and told them what they saw. And so once all of the kids knew what was going on, they talked amongst themselves and were like, we have to stop Ben's character from just slaughtering all of these non-combatants. And they ended up putting his character down. Now, granted, he killed his youngest son's character while in his berserk state. So it was, and I was prepared for tears. I was prepared to pause the game and deal with any emotions that came up. And the group was fine. They were like, no, we did the right thing. And yeah, it sucks that Thorin Oakenshield died. But Sammy made a new character and was ready to go. And that's the other thing I would say. Don't be afraid. Like, I don't normally press pause in my games. Like, we get distracted and such, but like the game rolls on. But with kids games, don't be afraid to press pause. Explain a rule. Calm everyone down. Let everyone take a break. Give space for big emotions that arise. That pausing is very important to deal with when you're dealing with kids who are learning the game, learning how to interact with people, and learning how to engage in this imaginative, collaborative game that we call role-playing. Yeah, it was definitely like a scene right out of Abercrombie. John Deere, it was amazing. So, gaming with kids is super rewarding, both for you as the person running the game, but also for the kids. Again, studies have shown role-playing improves empathy, creative thinking, deductive reasoning, abductive and inductive reasoning, social interaction, math skills, English skills, and inspires creativity about the game outside of the game, whether that's coming up with their own stories, coming up with new characters, or being creative and drawing during the session or afterwards. My final last piece of advice is scope out who's going to be the next game master. Because ideally, you would run this game for kids until the kids are ready to take it over themselves. And in my experience, the biggest hint as to who will be the next dungeon master is the person who is constantly making new characters. They're still playing their one character, but if they're constantly going over the rules and coming up with new characters and continuing to make characters, that's a sign that they're invested and they want to be, that they could be helped to take over the seat behind the screen. That's right. I said the name of the show in the show. It's a meta reference. So that's it. That's our show for today. We'll be back on Thursday where we're going to be talking about storytelling and sandboxes and which is better and how do I run and what do I think about the two. But just so you guys know, we did release this week to all of the patrons of the Iconic Patreon at patreon.com/Iconic Production. The first installment of Bare Bones, which is a little adventure that Bob and I are putting together, hopefully on a monthly basis. We'll continue to work on that. We got the next one queued up, but this one is the Stormwrack Tower of the Embittered Carnifex. If you were a patron of the Iconic Production patronage this month, you got a free link to send it out to try it out for free. All we ask is that if you did look at it, please give it a review, guys. Yes, John, I appreciate that. Thank you to John and Tink for leaving their reviews. If you've read through it and you have comments, please leave us a review. The next one will be going out on the 15th, hopefully, of April, which is a forest adventure. And it is a Purple Prose title, Phantom. I'm very happy with it. Bob did a great job with the art. We had to install the Creative Commons license, and so the drive-through people reached out to us. The drive-through contact I had was, but by the way, I love everything about this. So even unsolicited, we had a great review. So if you have a chance, please, please, please leave us a review. Go check it out. It's $3.99 for a 2-page adventure and a set of character sheets that have art and are themed. They're really cool zine sheets that you can fold up and make a little booklet for. Great for a one-shot or for dropping into a campaign. And hopefully, sometime in the next couple of months, there will be a Savage Worlds conversion for all of these, as I am looking at applying for an ACE license. So, that's it for today. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I am JM. This has been Behind the Screen. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all later. Until then, have a good one.